In 2019, I traveled 5 times in 1 year. I went to places like Paris, London, New York,
Yay, it's so pretty.
Italy. Last year in 2022, I went to the Dominican Republic, Spain, Portugal, and California. And just the beginning of this year, I went to the Philippines for 5 weeks. In short, I traveled a lot. So I usually travel with my husband, but sometimes I travel with my friends, my family, or sometimes by myself. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how to afford travel in your 20s. Traveling is a lifestyle. So traveling isn't really just about checking off a bucket list or taking cute Instagram photos. For me personally, it's a way of life. And I realized this when I was 21 years old, which is the very first time I kind of solo traveled. I went to the Dominican Republic to visit my childhood friends. And I remember being at the airport and thinking that, oh my God, everything is so new. And I had to figure out so many things, right? From checking in your luggages and figuring out what number your gate is in or reading a flight board. And all these things seem very simple right now, but from someone who has never traveled alone before, that was a very exciting experience. That experience seems so simple, but honestly, it was very empowering, and up to this day, I remember that feeling. When you travel, you basically have so much uncertainty because you're always going to new places, you're encountering new problems all the time, and you basically become really good at problem solving. And this skill of problem solving is so important, and it ripples into other areas of your life without even knowing it. I always feel when you travel, you always discover something new about yourself. So you get to know yourself from a very different perspective. And when you inspire yourself, you get to show up in a very different way for other people, because it's almost like you fill your own cup with traveling, and then later on you feel more inspired to take action towards your dreams, or you inspire people along the way whenever you have that energy of feeling inspired and feeling empowered, all because of traveling. And this is why that no matter where I am in life, I always prioritize traveling, because I feel like traveling is that activity that I am my truest self, that I get to know myself in a very different way, and along the way I discover something new about myself, and then I share that to other people, which then makes them reflect about their own life, that it just becomes a whole different thing. And I'm very curious, is it just me that feels this way about traveling, or do you feel this too? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts about how traveling makes you feel. Okay, so now we're gonna go into my laptop so I can show you how I budget for a planned trip. So now that we've established how important traveling it is for us, let's get into the budgeting. And I decided to divide this part into 2 parts. So we're going to go over how to budget for a planned trip and also how to budget for a spontaneous trip. So let's get into the budgeting for a planned trip. So for this example, I decided to go over a very specific example so you can see it. And basically, we're going to see how much a trip costs if we're planning it ahead of time. So the example I'm using is going to Paris in 1 year. I will also assume that you have a part-time job or a full-time job and you're earning a minimum wage, so that you can see that this is going to be a very accessible strategy for anyone. As long as you have some sort of job that you are kind of doing, you should be able to afford to go to Paris in 1 year. I'm also going to assume that this is going to be a solo travel, or you don't have any dependents or any kids or spouse that you need to pay for. This is going to be something that you will do for you. So the very first step in this whole thing is really knowing how long you want to go for. So I've been to Paris twice, and I can say that 5 to 7 days is more than enough to get to know the city and to really embed yourself into the culture, or get to know the Parisian culture. So that's the very first step. Let's say we're going to go for a week in Paris, and next we're going to figure out how much it costs to fly to Paris 1 year from now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to a website called Expedia, because that's usually where I look up all my flights. So we're going to type in Paris. Where am I going to Paris? And the earliest you can do, so it's March 29 right now. We're coming from Toronto and we're going to Paris on April 1st to 7th. So we're gonna go all the way to 2024, but I think the maximum we can do is February 2024, so we're going to use 11 to 18 because we want to go for 7 days. I'm going to pick a non-stop flight just because I don't want to do a layover, so we're going to go with this airline, which is Delta. So this is the plane ticket for a round trip for 7 days, so $1,000 Canadian. And we're basically going to copy that into a Word document, or in this case I'm just going to use Apple Notes, and then to show you how much it's going to cost. So next we're going to do accommodation. I usually use Airbnb or sometimes hotel, really depending which one's going to be cheaper and what kind of trip I'm going for. If I'm going to be cooking in the trip, I will use Airbnb, but if I'm just going to eat outside all the time, then I'm just going to use a hotel. So let's look at it, Airbnb for those dates. So we want to look at Paris from February 11 to 18, 2024. Perfect. And let's say you are one guest because it's a solo trip. So just from looking at this, it looks like the average cost of Airbnb is around $1,000 to $1,500. You can get some from less than $1,000, but it looks like they're very small, which is fine because you're alone. Let's look at hotels to see if we can get an average of $1,000 for accommodation. So we're going to Paris and we're going in 2024 as well. So now I'm looking at hotels for the same dates. It's going to be, let's see. So from here, it looks like it's about $4,800 or $1,400. So it's very comparable, Airbnb and hotel. This obviously is a preference. What do you feel like? Do you feel like staying in a hotel, being in the same room for 7 days? Or do you want to feel like a local and stay in an Airbnb? So when I travel, I usually do a mix of both. Doesn't matter. We're going to say that the accommodation costs about $1,000 for 7 days. Next, we're going to look at different activities that you want to do. And obviously this is something that you can do or that you don't have to do. But at the beginning of my early travel stages, I did a lot of touristy activities. These days, I don't do that much anymore. I like to just not go with itinerary. But because you're new to this whole traveling adventure by yourself or with other people, we're going to assume that you like doing touristy things. So we're going to look up different activities for Paris. So this website lists all the activities that you can do while you're in Paris, and they have the prices as well, so you can really gauge how much it's going to cost you to do every single activity that you wanted to do. So after going through that list, I budgeted $200 Canadian for the activities that I would want to do in Paris. This does not add up to $200, but we are going to go kind of crazy and really give us a lot of budget for activities. Next, we want to estimate the cost of the food while we're there, and we're also going to assume that you will be staying or you will be eating out every single day for your time there because you're in Paris, you don't want to cook, and we're going to see how much it costs to actually eat in Paris. So I'm just gonna look up Paris food cost 1 week. So this website says that the average daily cost of food in Paris is around 232 euros. So I feel like that's a lot, but it's 2023. I don't know what the costs are in Paris, so we're going to assume that it's correct. And I'm going to convert the 1,625 euro to Canadian dollar, which is about 1,800, which is a lot. So I'm going to reduce that to $1,500 for 1 week. So we're going to do $1,500 for food. Next, transportation. So transportation is really good in Paris. You can take their metro, you can buy a metro pass that you can use for the whole week. And I believe that a metro pass for 10 uses costs 20 euros, which is about 30 Canadian dollars. So it's quite cheap to get around in Paris, especially everything is very accessible by subway or metro as they call it. So basically now we have almost the total cost of everything. So we're just gonna add them up really quick. So based on this estimate, it would cost you around 3,835 for a 1 week bougie Paris experience, because this is not a budgeted cost at all. This is how I usually plan my trips, by the way. I don't go for like the cheaper version. Actually, no, that's a lie. I used to go for the cheaper version. Now I go for the things I want to do despite their prices. Up to a certain level, obviously I'm not that rich. So let's say it's gonna cost you $3,800 to experience Paris for 1 week, but you have 1 whole year to save up for this. And it's basically very simple at this point. So you have $3,800 that you need to save up for, and you have 12 months. So divide that into 12 months. And that is about $316 per month that you need to save up for every single month. In Ontario, the minimum wage is about $15 per hour Canadian. So this means that you would need to work about 25 to 30 hours to fund your Paris trip. So depending how important it is for you to travel in a certain way, this is the minimum amount that you need to put every single month in order for you to have a fancy or whatever type of experience you want to have in Paris. I used to work at a local grocery store, and this is literally how I funded my first Dominican trip, my first Paris trip, and every single trip that I've had while I was in university working 2 jobs. So Paris and all these other places are not for the rich. You just need to be really good at budgeting your money. And this strategy, it doesn't make you sacrifice on your current life right now. It doesn't make you sacrifice on the experience, because we're not having a cheap trip here. So essentially, you're not going to go broke by doing this strategy in your current life and in your future life. So if I haven't lost you yet, let's go over on how I budget for a spontaneous trip. Budgeting for spontaneous trips. When I didn't earn as much, I used to allocate about $200 into this travel fund, and I would basically just take a portion of my paycheck and put it into this travel fund. This is not a savings account. This is not an investment account. This is specifically for travel, so that I wouldn't feel guilty on the money that I spent on traveling. So let's say, for example, you decide to put $200 per month on your travel fund, and you save up for 1 year and you don't go for 1 year, which is what happened during the pandemic. So after a year, this $200 is going to be converted into $2,400 in 1 year, and now you have $2,400 to spend on any kind of travel that you want, whether that is going to Vegas or going to an all-inclusive or any other place, or let's say your friends decided to invite you to go to a place that you didn't really expect, but now you have the money to actually go and experience it. So these days, my husband and I, we allocate $1,000 per month on travel because we don't sacrifice on the quality of our travel experiences. There used to be a time where we put $500 together, but as we grow and as we get higher income, that fund goes higher. And again, other funds like investment, retirements, and other budgeting things are all accounted for. So this is specifically for travel fund. If you are not earning a lot of money and you want to kind of get into this habit, put as little as $50. I don't care how much you're earning right now, as little as $50 every single month for travel, because after 2 years, that money is going to grow. So the money that you will allocate on your travel fund really depends on what travel means to you. Like I've said in the beginning of this video, is that travel is a way of life. It's a lifestyle for me. So I will sacrifice on things like fancy restaurants or fancy clothing so that I can have money for travel. It's so important to reflect on what traveling means to you so that you can be comfortable on the money that you're spending on travel. So that's basically how to afford to travel in your 20s. I really hope that this video resonated with you and that you be kind to yourself and take it one day at a time. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.